Hello and welcome to the No Balls Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick McDonald. With me, co-host Sheldon Kaufman. 10th episode of the NBA Preseason show. Today we're going to piss off an entire country. Feel excited. Toronto Raptors, finals team of the Atlantic Division. This is going to be one of the more negative ones, I think, maybe, but we're gonna keep it positive. What do you have on Toronto before we get started?
I guess I'll do like one word on them. Two words, but like
Steve
individual
Nash and
words.
Chris Paul.
Yeah, no. Um, weird and confusing. 3 words: weird and confusing.
Speaking of
That's
Steve
what I
Nash,
got.
he's a Canadian, I believe. So, um,
It all ties
anyway,
in.
yeah. So this was definitely a pretty down season for the Raptors. This is a really weird one because I believe a year ago, like not this season, but the year before, everybody was thinking the teardown that they did this year was going to happen. And they didn't end up trading Van Vliet. They didn't end up trading Siakam or Anunoby. And then they ended up losing Van Vliet for nothing. Now they ended up trading Siakam. They got a whatever return for them. They got traded Anunoby. They got a return for him. Very. This was overall just a very weird season for Toronto, and I don't. I would assume that the fans would communicate this as well. Going into what happened in the season, 25-57, 12th in the Eastern Conference, was not a good results season. Expected record 26-56, not much better. At home, 14-27, not good. On the road, 11-30, also not good. Pre-All-Star break, 19-36, and then they really hit the tank button post All-Star break, 6-21. Eastern Conference record 18-34, and then versus the West 7-23, also not good. In clutch games 17-25, and then in other games 8-32. Overall, just was just not a very good Raptors team. And to add on to this, they didn't get their own pick this season. What do you have on the Toronto Raptors?
Yeah, they weren't good really. They had some injury issues. The lineups were kind of weird throughout the year. Scotty Barnes missed time. Jakob Poeltl missed time. There's just, yeah, like you said, just not a good team. There's really no other way to put it. They just weren't a good team last year, but they had some interesting players, I think. But like that's really it. They have a couple interesting guys, but they just didn't really end up meshing together,
Yeah,
creating results.
and I had seen this. Masai Ujiri's had probably a rough 2 years running the show here. He seemed really slow to disassemble the championship team from 2019.
Yeah,
And then the Jakob Poeltl trade a year ago, which made them lose their pick this year, ended up going to San Antonio. There's just a lot of stuff here not working out in the Raptors' favor. We'll get into the individual stuff. Last season, negative 6.3 net rating, 24th in the league. They were not a very good team. On the offensive side, 24th ranked, 111.8 offensive rating. On the defensive side, 26th ranked, 118.1 defensive rating. They didn't really had a side that they really held it down on. They just kind of sucked at both ends of the floor. What do you have in general here?
yeah. I mean, they were a young team, so I guess that kind of makes sense for the just like the bad numbers, because yeah, just bad, bad. Nothing
Yeah,
good.
young team, not very talented, rookie head coach. Not
Yeah, just a
much
lot of
looking in.
inexperience.
Yeah, not much looking in their
Not a lot of
favor. We'll break down the offensive side. 13th in in transition offense. Not bad. They had a lot of young guys they could run. Um, in the half court, 30th pick and roll ball handler efficiency, 29th frequency. So at least they didn't run themselves into the dirt with it, but they were 0th percentile in this, in that facet of half court offense. Um, and then you look into the other half of the pick and roll, 27th in roll man efficiency. At least they didn't run themselves into the dirt with that. They were 27th in frequency. They were still 10th percentile, so they probably had the worst pick and roll game in the entire league. Um, it was not good watching it. Their strong suit on the offensive side, 18th in post up efficiency, 15th in frequency, 41st percentile. Their strong suit is still not very good. We get to their other aspect, the key aspect that we look into here. 28th in isolation efficiency, 28th in frequency, 7th percentile. This was probably the ugliest offense to look at in offensive tendencies here. The key part that I found, because I was like, what are they running that's stopping them from being the worst offensive team in the league? They had a lot of offensive transition possessions. I think they were like second in the league. It was, their saving grace offensively. Otherwise, I think they would have been one of the worst, like the bottom two in the league. You have anything on their offense here?
I think we pretty much covered all the bases. Transition numbers make sense. Emmanuel Quickly, one of the faster guards in the league. Um,
And a bunch of
yeah,
size
this
too.
yeah, a lot of size. I mean, you just don't have a lot of like you talked about the pick and roll guys. You don't have a lot of guys that can really finish around the rim. I mean, Jakob Pertl, I guess. Kelly Olynyk, who's not that big. He's more of like a stretch big. So I mean, it kind of makes sense why the numbers are bad. Um, that's just crazy to hear that they're just that bad at certain like all those facets of offense.
Yeah, and then we'll see it when we go through like the names and the lineups they were running. Um, they didn't have good roll men at the four either for
Hmm.
most of the season. Uh, offensive rebounding, 18th. They were so on getting extra possessions there. On the defensive side of the floor, 26th in transition defense, not good. Um, in the half court, 20th in pick and roll ball handler defense, 19th frequency, 35th percentile. Not great at containing perimeter defender or perimeter offensive players. Um, their strong suit on the defensive side, 7th in pick and roll defense, 13th in frequency. Pretty strong here, 79th percentile. Good stuff. 17th in post up defense, 22nd in frequency, 38th percentile. 23rd in ISO defense and ISO defense frequency, 24th percentile. Overall, you could see this just wasn't a great defensive team, and then that is magnified by the fact that they were 29th in defensive rebounding. Not a overall, just not a great defensive or offensive team. We can go forward into the scheme talk to talk about why this is the case, because I feel like that's really important to do here. What do you have here?
Defensively, I mean, they just don't really have the guys that can defend. They just don't really have good individual defenders. I noticed with Olynyk, they like to switch a lot. When Olynyk was running center with Jakob Pertl out, they would switch a lot just because Olynyk isn't the biggest guy. But it was pretty straight up that I saw. Did you get anything?
Yeah, so what I noted was they have a lot of guys who can switch, but it's
Yeah.
a lot of guys that you are just fine with switching because they weren't already that good at defending a certain body type. So it's a bunch of guys who are like okay at guarding every body type, um,
Yep.
being like guard, wing, center. Overall, they ended up just getting attacked in their weak spots defensively a lot. Um, if we look at the lineups post trade deadline, they only would play one big, and it would be Pirtle or Olynyk, right?
Yeah.
No matter what you're doing
And
there, there's nobody who's a great inside the paint scorer. Neither Pirtle's a great rim protector. I mean, he's a pretty good one, but he's not top of the line. And then you have Olynyk out there. You're not protecting the rim very well. Um, he played power forward for Utah, right? Like, you're not protecting the rim very well. And when Olynyk did play power forward for Utah, or center for Utah, they had other size around them. In the lineups like this, they were literally Scotty Barnes would be their positional power forward, but he would play point guard on offense. So then Scotty Barnes is your power forward technically, but you're giving up a little size there even, and then you just have a bunch
Yeah,
of wings with Quickly out there as well, kind of playing some point guard duties and doing a lot of two guard stuff.
yeah,
Um, yeah, they really lacked a true taller wing who could play. Scotty is a very good player, but he's not erasing shots at the rim. He's not a super big body on help defense, although he's pretty good. I don't think he's a solo guy who can lift up the defense of the team, especially with what you're asking him to do on offense, which is play point guard for them.
yeah. Um, it's interesting. I'd also noted that they would run Pirtle or Olenek, not really same at the same time, especially after that All-Star break. But you mentioned it. Olenek sucks at rim protecting. Pirtle's great at or Pirtle's good at rim protecting. Pirtle does not have the offensive bag or passing ability that Olenek has. So I mean, they just have it's two completely different centers, and I think that's why like they have really no true rim protector down low. Like you said, you have Scotty Barnes running power forward. I mean, I probably personally rather see him at that three, where he doesn't have to, have to guard inside as much. He can guard outside, use his length to deflect passes, stuff like that. Um, yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know. They did not. I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot a lot with the lineups they ran out. I think
yeah,
that's what I would say.
and I mean it's even like the roster that they had. It wasn't well constructed. You think about it this way: post trade deadline, right? With Olynyk and Pirtle being their guys there. When you run Pirtle out there, you now have a non-shooter out there with a lineup of Scotty Barnes, R.J. Barrett, Bruce Brown. Quickly's out there, of course, but R.J. Barrett and Scotty are not spacing very well for you.
They're
So
streaky.
then suddenly you feel like you do need to have Olynyk out there. Then you have Olynyk out there in a lineup where your tallest guy out there besides that is 6'6" with Barrett and Barnes. You're giving up. No matter what you do, neither of these centers fit with the starting lineup. I don't think, and maybe it is some of the other guys that they're playing not fitting with each other. But I think the centers, no matter what they do, they were shooting themselves in the foot here.
Yeah, it wasn't not really. If it was just bad, like you said, the roster was not constructed well.
Yeah, and then you can look back to the Anunoby trade where they brought in Barrett and Quickly. There had been reports that they were getting 3 first-round picks for Anunoby. I definitely believe that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Considering what Bridges just got on the open market, the market
Yep,
that Bridges had been rumored to have before. And then you settle with Quickly and Barrett. It just seems kind of it didn't seem like it was worth what Anunoby probably should have returned you on the market. Um, as a Knicks fan, I watched a lot of these guys. Quickly's definitely the better player of the two. I don't Quickly might not be a starter on a great NBA team. Barrett probably can't play next to other good players because of his lack of shooting and playmaking ability. I think that was honestly a very bad trade for them, especially with the fact they had to extend Quickly and Barrett was already on a huge contract. They're kind of locked into this. These are kind of their guys, unless they add in through the draft,
yeah,
especially with all the money they have tied up to Pirtle as well. Pirtle getting $20 million a season. Barnes now got his extension for 45 a season. They're kind of locked into this roster, and I don't know if this is a roster I would really like being locked into.
yeah. I mean, I think RJ Barrett and Quickly are really good players. I think Barrett's going to shine in Toronto, kind of like those leader of the tank guys we've talked about before. Um, but I think he's going to put up better. I think he's going to look better than he did in New York, just because it's a better situation for him personally, just because he's just going to have more opportunities and there's not like really any pressure on him at all. And then Quickly shown ability to to be a really good 3 point shooter, uh, just spot up shooter, good playmaker, really good defender. I like them. Like you said, was it the best return for Ananobi? Probably not. Um, I don't think it was the worst thing. I don't think RJ Barrett and Quickly are the worst. It's an interesting big three for sure, and we'll see how it works out. Um, yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know. It's definitely not. It's definitely not my first three picks. I would want to three guys. I want to lock myself with long term. But
certainly. It's kind of when you
it's
look at this
mid.
roster, it looks like you're missing the piece, is what it looks like to me. And then
Yep.
when you look in how they would bring in the piece, it's like the draft next this season, and then you gotta wait 2 seasons before that guy is the guy.
Mhm.
At that point, Barrett's contract is almost due, like it's almost up. So maybe that works, but then at that point, Quickly's 29, and Scotty Barnes is 27, right? Like your core is gonna be aging a little bit. I don't know how this goes forward. We'll get forward into their off season.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and just hit on their coaching staff. This is approaching year 2 for Darko Regarovich, I believe. Interesting notes on him.
Darko.
Darko, that's what we're going to call him. Interesting
Yes.
notes on him. He was an assistant for the late 2010s Thunder, post KD Thunder. Think about that. The New School Grizzlies, 21-22 Grizzlies, and then he was on an assistant for the Bubble Suns as well. Interesting stuff. They brought guys from everywhere. Um, Vin Ben Haveny from the Thunder, uh, Pat Delaney from the Hornets and Wizards, Mike Batiste from the Hornets, Wizards, Magic, and Nets, Andrew Jones from Detroit, Phoenix, OKC, Jim Sun from the Nets and the Bulls. They had a bunch of guys from everywhere. They're getting a bunch of coaching intel. We'll see how it ends up working out. Hopefully allows them to be flexible with a roster that I think they're very much just starting to build.
Yeah. I think my only thing on Darko would be he also got some. He kind of came from a Popovich tree, I guess. I know he gave him a lot of advice because they're both from Europe, and I think they were on the Spurs together at one point.
This
Um,
that does sound correct. Yeah.
because I saw a picture of them together, so I don't know. That's some more of the coaching lore on Darko, but he
Yeah.
seems. I don't know. Maybe he's the guy that comes in and well, he's been in the league for a while. He'll instict some discipline. Maybe this becomes not as a um just like crazy erratic team.
Yeah. And then there's not much on the scheme stuff for them right now. Like we had already touched on it, but this is very much still an open book on how this team's going to play. We get forward to their off season and how they're currently building around the team. In the draft, they selected at round 1 pick 19 Jacoby Walter from Baylor. Round 2 pick 1 Jonathan Mogbo. Round 2 pick 15 Jamal Shed. Round 2 pick 27 uh Ulrich Chon Chitui. That's a tough one. UDFA Jamison Battle, UDFA Brandon Christian, who's now on a 2-way. Jamison Battle. I don't even know if he made it out of the summer league with them, but those are just the guys that they brought in. Um, Any of them you want to touch on? I'm sure your Baylor fandom really likes
Yeah.
Jacoby
Before I
Walter.
go into it, Jacoby Walter, was he a guy that you had higher up than 19
Um,
pre-draft?
Pre-draft, I would think I had him around 19. I wouldn't
Oh,
think I
okay.
had him too much higher. I definitely didn't have a lottery grade on him, but I had a mid first round pick grade on him.
Yeah. I like Walter. Freshman last year, 6'5", 195. I played primarily guard for Baylor last year, and this kid is a 3-point shooter. Um, Only 34% from three, but his catch and shoot is going to make him, I think, a really good role player in the NBA. He can attack and finish around the rim. He's a really good defender. I think he's just going to be your typical 3 and D guy.
Yeah,
Has a pretty long career. I think he's good though. I think he is. I think his shooting upside. I think he's going to become a really good catch and shooter. His off the dribble scoring is inconsistent, but I really don't see that being a problem because I don't see him handling the ball in most situations. I could see him even transitioning to maybe a wing role. I think he has the height to maybe
yeah,
play it. Maybe if he beefs up, and he tends to make bad decisions with the ball, but like I said, I don't think he'll have the ball that much. And then he can struggle sometimes with finishing and transition. But overall, to take away, he's a guy that will sit in the corner and make shots. He'll be at the
yeah,
top of the key and he'll make shots for you. I really like the pick.
yeah. You had mentioned it with Jacoby. He definitely was overtasked at Baylor. He doesn't really seem to be a great on-ball creator. Um, in this week draft, you're looking for guys who maybe need to be given a role change. I think Jacoby is like it's the most shoe-in role change to a 3 and D player that I've ever seen.
Mhm.
That being said, a lot of the things that you have brought up were reasons that I didn't necessarily have a super high grade on him. There's concerns about the decision making. Hopefully that is lessened in an off-ball role. I think it should be. He's not going to have to make as many spread pick and roll reads as you saw with Toronto. They didn't run that anyway last
Yeah.
season. So, if he's asked to shoot corner threes and above the break threes, I think he's going to be great. 34% was the number you had said. A bunch of bad attempts that he had to take on
Yep.
Baylor last season.
Exactly.
I think on the catch and shoot reps, what was his number at? It was definitely a lot closer to 40%.
I can look it up though.
Either way,
I'll look
like
it up.
he passed the eye test as a shooter last season for me to think he's good. Defensively, I think he's gonna be fine. Um, you can have some concerns that maybe they're building this team thinking that Scotty is the guy because Jacoby this season, Grady Dick last season, a bunch of 3 and D guys. This is what you draft when you think you have the guy. But I think if they would have had an earlier pick, they would have probably spent it on a creator who could be the number one versus Scotty. I think selecting Jacoby isn't because they think Scotty's the one. It's because Jacoby was legitimately just the best player available on the clock. And I think he did maybe not slide a little bit, but I do think he was the best player on the clock for maybe a couple picks while
Yeah.
he was still there.
Yeah. This is saying 89%
Yeah, I
off
don't
catch
know.
and shoot threes.
89?
Off Oh wait, never mind. It says he made 89% of his 3-point shots off assists.
Okay, yeah. So either way, that's
So,
a really good indicator that
yeah.
you get him off the ball a lot more. He should be a lot more effective. Um, I did get a lot more on Jonathan Mogbo than I did. You get anything on him?
I did, but go ahead, take the floor.
Dude, 6'8", versatile defender, great passer. He's a true center. He's not going to shoot for you. He's not. I mean, you can pass him the ball in the high post. He's athletic. He can finish around the rim pretty well, but he can switch pretty well 1 through 3 or 3 through 5. I mean, and he can pass the ball really well. I think this should hopefully open up their offense a little bit. I'm very interested in how they're going to use Mogbo in the NBA. What did you get him?
Yeah, I think you absolutely nailed it, especially talking about the assist numbers. And 6'8" guy, kind of undersized. Does he play center? Does he play power forward? Good passer. That's kind of like a Kelly Olynyk in my eyes. I mean, Olynyk had 4.6 assists per game last year. So I mean, I think you could learn from a guy like that. He's athletic, like you said, defensively versatile, very good defender. He shot well. His offense, it's meh.
Yeah.
Like his offensive bag is meh. He can't shoot at all, but I think like you said, it's gonna open up their offense, and you get a guy that can play defense for you.
Yeah, and at the very least, he can fit in those lineups that they did with Kelly, where they switch everything,
Yep.
and maybe Mogbo plays out there with Kelly playing the four. It'll give them some size, and Mogbo can guard fours. Is the big standout with him. He can guard fours and not super physical fives. So
Yeah.
and his passing should hopefully open up their offense too. I'm not super high on him because I don't know if he's necessarily polished enough, offensively, but if they can find a way to get him on the lineup, I think he should really help them. Um, Additionally, I think I really loved what they did in the second round as well. Jamal Shed, like this guy was, he shot 30% from three in his college career, but you kind of don't care. There was stuff saying that this is the best perimeter defender I've ever seen from like a lot of people who do a lot of great draft work. I believe he had an injury late in the season, caused him to fall down. He had a lot of late first, early second round evaluations on him. 6'1", he's a great defender. He's going to guard 1 and 2, and he's an excellent passer. So I mean, I'm not sure how they're going to use Jamal. I don't know. He probably won't play immediately for them, but he did get a 2-year deal guaranteed with the Raptors. So, did you get anything
Yeah,
on Jamal?
he was one of the guys a lot of people were talking about last year in college basketball just because Houston was so good. Um, really good playmaker. He was really good in the pick and roll game, which kind of worries me because, like you said, the Raptors weren't really running that a lot. But also, like you said, he's better playmaker and defender, like one of the best defenders in college basketball last year. Really good. It helped them get a lot of transition buckets. I think he becomes an NBA type of guy if he can shoot. That's my
Sure.
main worry. Can he hit the three? Because he's 6'1", 6'1", 190, like a little undersized. So, but if you can shoot and you play that great defense, I think there's a lot of upside. And I think the playmaking and the defense is the thing to really harp on. 6.3 assists last year.
Yeah. Um, Jamal, like we said, uh, yeah, he's short. He's probably going to have to play into a backup point guard role to even have a chance. Defense gets him on the floor. They already have a issue with spacing, so it will be harder for him to get on the court. I just looked it up. They gave him a 3-year rookie contract, which is a very
Oh,
good
okay.
sign that a team actually does want to keep, they do think he is legitimately a future asset for them. We can go forward. I didn't get much on Ulrich, Battle, or Carlson. Carlson's on a two-way. Ulrich is on a two-way.
Yeah,
Ulrich was the second to
Ulrich.
last pick in the draft. He's
Yeah, I'm just reading it now. It came from the African League, the Africa NBA Academy, whatever. Like they do the overseas stuff.
yeah, like it's a path that hasn't been explored very much, so it's very hard to know what to expect out of him. Um, it's
Youngest
a
player in the
pickup that
draft.
it's a pickup we should at least mention.
Yep.
Now we'll go to their other offseason stuff. Additions, you brought him up pre-pod. Bruno Fernando, um,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
NBA center. Yeah, I mean it's Bruno. Um, Other additions, Davion Mitchell. He was acquired in the same trade that they got the Jamal Shed pick. Additionally, in the trade was Sasha Vezenkov going to Toronto. We'll get into that for a second. This was all for Jaden McDaniels, uh, or Jalen McDaniels.
Yeah.
Interesting 3-and-D player. Anyway, Sasa Vezenkov, previously of the Kings, foreign European player, gets traded because he didn't want to be in Sacramento. ends up in Toronto, decides he doesn't want to be in Toronto either, so he decides he's going to go back and
Okay.
play overseas. However, Toronto needs to allow him to do that. I'm not sure if this has been
They
settled
won't.
yet. Um,
Oh,
I'm not sure if it has been. I'll
sorry.
go look at it. He tried to play
Okay.
in FIBA for World Cup, or not World Cup. Um, for the
Olympics
Olympics,
or
and he
oh,
didn't.
okay.
I don't know if he got a FIBA right of clearance. Um,
That's crazy.
yeah, it's like one of the weirdest NBA stories I've ever seen. Um, I have. I'm looking and I don't see any reporting on it. Over the past 3 weeks, yeah. So
Yeah, it's
okay,
crazy.
no, the Raptors apparently did buy him out.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that means he's
So he's
going
free.
overseas. Yeah, he's going
Let's
overseas,
go.
back home. Um, yeah, interesting. Just a saga for sure. I'm sure they actually did really like him. Um,
Yeah.
Subtractions: Javon Freeman, Liberty, Mamudo, uh, Mamohadu Guy,
Yep.
gone. Jordan Nwora, gone. Officially gone now. Jonte Porter. Known minimum contract player Gary Trent Jr., which is actually like a legitimate loss for them. I don't, you know, they could have definitely brought him back for more than Milwaukee gave him, but they didn't. And then Jalen McDaniels, like we mentioned before. I mean, nothing too significant for their future. They probably weren't going to be a good team this season anyway. So, you have any notes on these addition subtractions?
I think the Davion Mitchell one is kind of big, I guess, if you want to say big. But I mean, he's kind of Jamal Sheed, but more proven in the NBA.
Yeah,
This is a guy that's been like considered a great NBA perimeter defender, and he can shoot the ball as well. 36% from 3 point last year. I see him having a bigger role than he did last year, just getting more minutes. I think he's the backup. I like him as the backup guard behind Quickly, to be honest.
I agree.
Um, so yeah, it's gonna be fun to watch. I mean, I'm just big on him because he went to Baylor, and I've been watching him. He was a really good player for the Kings, though.
Yeah,
Um, but
in
with
the
the emergence of Malik Monk, he just kind of ended up falling out of the rotation.
yeah in the um, Warriors series, he was a big part in that series against Curry. I think Keon Ellis breaking out for them this season really kind of made Davion Mitchell kind of a mute point in Sacramento. Um,
Yeah.
and they wanted to get a guy like Jalen McDaniels, a guy that they didn't have. Um, Other stuff that I did have on them, they re-signed Scotty Barnes. We had mentioned this exact contract type with Franz Wagner, 224 over 5 seasons, 25% max. It would escalate to 269 or a 30% max if he were to make All NBA this season. So, you know, I think it's fair you give Scotty Barnes this contract every time to keep him in town. Whether or not he makes All NBA this season, I'm not sure if he does. So it probably ends up just being that 224 over 5.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's a good contract, especially if Franz got the same type of contract. I think that's a great contract for them.
I agree. Um, Additionally, Emmanuel quickly brought in. I had written down 162 over 5, but that doesn't seem
I see
right.
170. I got 175 over 5.
Okay, so what had it? Okay, I do know what's going on now. He had $12.5 million in non likely incentive, I think is how this worked.
Mm.
I'm not sure what the exact incentives are. I couldn't find it from looking on Spot Rack. Um, if you end up adding up the incentives, assuming he just gets them, to what is already guaranteed, it's a 23% extension. It, I mean, it's a fair contract for Quickly. I saw a lot of stuff on it being too much when it first happened, but I don't see how it ends up being a super bad contract for them. It's guaranteed 32 annually. No, solid contract. What do you have on this?
I mean, I think you already know that I'm high on Quickly, talking about him earlier. This is a guy that put up 18 points per game for you last year, 6 assists, 4 rebounds. He shot 40% or 39% from the three, but and I watched a couple games of film, but there was one in particular that just really was eye opening, and it was against the Lakers, I believe, and quickly came down and made like two fading shots to start the game, threes.
That was the
He's
game
it's
where Darko ended up yelling after, right?
oh yeah, it might have been.
Yeah,
It was against if it was against the Lakers, then yeah.
yeah, for sure.
But
Yeah,
yeah, he's just a crazy shot creator or a shot just a shot maker, good playmaker, great defender. I like the deal. I like that they locked him down.
yeah. I mean, I
Good deal.
think
Thumbs up for me.
when the deal happened, I was like, maybe Maxi or not Maxi, quickly really breaks out, similarly to how Maxi did. He didn't quite do that, but the reason I'm fine still giving him this contract, you're paying him a bump down from the guys. He's not making a rookie max extension. He's just under that, and um, he's got there's still a chance that he does take that next step. In worst case scenario, he's proven on the New York teams that he can be a big piece and really good playoff teams. So yeah, that's all I really
Yep.
have on IQ. I think it's a perfectly fine contract. Um, Going forward now, the main piece of the Raptors here is Scotty Barnes. I think if you ask a Raptors fan how many players on this team would be on the next championship Raptors team, the only name they would definitely give you is Scotty. I feel like he would be on 100% of the list. I think obviously after that would be Emmanuel Quickly, but you go and look at the net ratings. There were only 3 players who had a positive net rating with Scotty Barnes on the court after Pascal Siakam was traded, so I went without Pascal.
Okay.
So Emmanuel Quickly, OG Anunoby, and Jakob Poeltl.
We're all better.
They all had positive net ratings with Scotty on the floor without Pascal Siakam on the floor.
Okay.
OG's gone, obviously. Quickly and Jakob Poeltl are probably going to be starters for this team next season.
Yep.
The 3-man lineup of Scotty, IQ, and Jakob had a plus 11 net rating. And then RJ Barrett, worked well in this lineup in 200 minutes played with it. We had mentioned it before. It's kind of a clanky fit, but it still ended up working kind of fine. In this lineup, Gary Trent Jr. worked really well. So did Bruce Brown. Or Bruce Brown did not work well in this lineup.
Yeah.
Which is a big thing. And I think the main reason for that is they're playing Scotty at the 4 in this lineup. Technically, you don't want Bruce Brown out there because that's additional size that you're losing. So you want these bigger wings. Grady Dick, Jacoby Walter, I think certainly fall into that category. Other than that, there's not much to break down out of this team. They were not a good team. They literally had a player trying to miss his shots on purpose last year. It's really, really hard to make anything out of the advanced stats with this team.
Yeah, I agree. Just yeah.
Just not a
There's
good
nothing
team.
really even to comment on. Yeah.
Hopefully next season with playing Scotty and IQ and whatever center next season, it mainly worked really well with Poeltl because he's a good rim protector. Then they'll hopefully see some good results. Yeah, that's all I really have on this team with stat analyzation here.
Yeah. You want to get into maybe some possible lineups?
Yeah, let's bring up the lineups because I think it is really interesting. Scotty
I can
Barnes is
start.
technically the
Oh,
point guard, right? We're going to start there.
yeah.
He's
Yeah.
technically the point guard. Whether or not he is the point guard in the lineup or whether he's the power forward in the lineup, I think that really depends.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think regardless, Quickly's starting in the lineup. We'll kind of go from there. What do you have with Toronto?
Yeah. So, I mean, I threw Barnes at the 3 just because I even though I know they run it through him, I think he's 3. I had Quickly at the 1. I had Barrett at the 2, Olynyk at the 4, and Poeltl at the 5. I think that we talked about how iffy both of them are solo. I think if you put them both together, like you said, Olenek finally gets to play power forward, and it counteracts the two things that they're both trash at, defense and
Yep.
offense. So I mean, that's kind of I think that's the best lineup they can put out. Fits the team best. Will that be the lineup they throw out? Maybe not.
Yeah, I don't
What do you
know.
got?
I really, it's trying to figure out where they would put Olenek defensively. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. Playing him at the four, I'm sure there's a lot of teams you could get away with doing that on. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad lineup for them to run. I'm interested if they play Jacoby in the starting lineup day one. He didn't scream
Really?
super NBA ready, but I would say he was on like the 60th percentile of NBA readiness in the draft this season. I think it could be something they do, having him start games for them this year.
I could see it. I could see it if Barnes if Barnes is at power forward. My thing is what will he play wing or guard? If you play guard, I can see that. If he plays
See,
wing, I don't
yeah,
know. He'd have
I
to. I
think
think you put him over Olenek, and then you put Barnes at that four spot. What they
yeah.
usually
So
do, right? Or
certainly
maybe Barrett.
Scotty, yeah, certainly Scotty's playing guard offensively and wing defensively.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I mean, you really just look with this team like they definitely need the number one guy. I think because I think you go into a different timeline. Let's say they have a number one scorer on this team, and Scotty is kind of your like super Draymond. Like he might even be a little bit better than Draymond on the offensive side of the floor. Um,
Yeah, 100% agree.
like I think that's a really good team. Right now, you're just asking Scotty Barnes to run an offense, an NBA offense, and it struggles. Um, I think if they find their number one guy, you know, they've drafted 3-and-D wings with Grady and Jacoby. They already have Scotty. Barrett can, he's tall and athletic. He's pretty good there, quickly as well. Like there's at least there's a skeleton of maybe a good team here. Um, and I don't think that really answered the lineup questions, but I think those are the main guys for them for
Just
sure.
kind of throwing out.
Maybe it is that three
Yeah, I
or that
think.
double big lineup that you mentioned.
Yeah, no, but I think what you alluded to is because even if you have Walter playing guard, he's 6'5", so you still
Yeah,
have size at that position.
I mean quickly and Walter together is a really big guard lineup, so it gives back a little bit with Scotty at the four, but you know there's still some positional
Still
size.
not ideal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and like even if you want to bring in a smaller guard in some lineups with quickly out there and Scotty out there still. Quickly played really well next to Brunson in New York. So,
I mean, you could
I
put
think,
quickly at that too, Mitchell or Shahid.
yeah,
Two great playmakers. I like that.
yeah. And then, like, we brought up Mogbo before. I think he could be really interesting for them, too, because he could come in with the Olenek lineups, and I think he would play a little bit better. I think there would be a little more synergy than Pirtle and Olenek together, even though I think Pirtle and Olenek are just both definitely better than Mogbo. So, I don't know.
Yeah. Do you
I'm
think Mogbo's better than Ajabi, Agbaji,
oh yeah, we didn't
Ocha?
mention Oshai. He did play a lot
Yeah.
for them in those lineups with Scotty quickly and Jakob last year. He was really interesting coming into the draft 2 seasons ago because I thought this is a 3-and-D wing who's NBA ready, and then he just didn't do really well on defense or shooting in his first 2 years. Um, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Not
I
high
mean,
on him at all.
he's maybe he taps into it. I could see it happening. I mean, Dante Exum was a good 3-and-D player this season, so
Yeah.
it's not impossible. Um, they'll have they have a ton of wing minutes, like we said with Jacoby, Grady, Oshai. They're gonna dish out the wing minutes to those guys for sure.
100% agree.
Yeah. We didn't mention they still have Bruce Brown too.
Yeah, I'm not high on Bruce Brown, but I have him
It's
as the kind of, I guess,
he's for sure a
second guard,
trade.
shooting guard wise.
He's a trade um, piece for sure because I don't think he's good on this type of a team. Like we had seen that in Detroit, he wasn't really good in Detroit. His skill set didn't really mesh there. Um, he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't very good on. I forgot what other team he played on before, but
Indiana,
then
right?
India. No, no,
Or
no.
and
I
then
wasn't talking about
Indiana.
Indiana. He was really good in
There's
Brooklyn
one before.
with Katie and Kyrie. Like his skill set really flashed there, and his skill set really flashed in Denver as well, and it did in Indiana as well. I think he's a good player on good teams, and this just isn't a good team. To put it that way, somebody at the deadline is going to trade for Bruce Brown. They're going to like Bruce Brown, regardless of how he's going to play in Toronto, because it probably won't be too great. And I don't think Toronto's going to prioritize him either. So
Yep, you hit all there. I
yeah,
think everything you said pretty much summed that up. That whole situation up.
yeah. So I mean, we can get into predictions for them. Do we think they got better or worse? I think they just kind of stayed the same.
Yeah, I was gonna say I guess you can say they got better, but like pretty much the same team, but you added some youth and you kept your guys.
Yeah,
I'll say they got. I'm gonna go ahead and say they got better, but not by much.
I'm gonna go
Very
kind
minimal
of
improvement.
the opposite way because I think Jalen McDaniels and Trent were kind of some of their better wings last season. Um, I think they just
No.
barely got a little bit worse.
Oh yeah, no.
Um,
I agree. Gary Trent was a huge loss. Like he shot 40% almost and averaged 13 points per game. Like
it's a good piece.
that was yeah, no, that was huge.
And then I just they definitely just slightly got worse, but maybe they're starting to figure out the puzzle long term for sure in Toronto. And
That's what I'm kind of looking at it like.
where we project them next season, like I don't see them really competing too much next year. I mean, I could be surprised if Scotty takes a step forward, but yeah, this seems like another bottom feeder team, similarly to Brooklyn, who we had mentioned
Yeah.
earlier. They definitely seem like they're gonna make a plunge towards the bottom.
Yeah, I think if Scotty Barnes makes that next big step, it's a play in, like a 10 seed play in,
Yeah,
like
they sneak
fighting
in.
yeah, sneak in type deal, but yeah,
Yeah, with
like you
this
said,
next coming
it
draft,
just
no teams are gonna want to be out of the lottery for that draft. Like it looks really good.
especially when they get their own pick.
They get their pick this season. That's the big thing for them. Yeah. So we didn't do
Oh wait,
offensive MVPs either for them.
they did get their picks last year. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, offensive MVP. I went Scotty Barnes. I just feel like if you're going to be successful, you're running the offense through Scotty Barnes, and he's a guy I would like to see his 3 point go up. I think that would unlock his game a lot. I think his form is like really ugly though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Scotty Barnes being the offensive MVP. I see him taking the next step. Defensive player of the year. I'll go quickly or Mitchell.
Okay.
I think those are your best guards. I think if Mitchell gets enough playing time, he's the defensive player because I think he's the best guard defensively right now. But quickly, I think that's the other guy I would go with. My X factor is RJ Barrett. Um, I think that I think if he can just, I mean, he did really good last year for them. He's a good cutter, really good in transition. He shot 39% last year from three. He post after he left New York and went to Toronto. I think his numbers went up. His play, he just looked better. Um, I don't know. I just really like him. I think that him with Barnes could be interesting, especially if they can both splice the floor well next season. What
Yeah.
you got though?
So I did have RJ as well for X Factor. The reason with him is even though like I do really like Scotty, I don't think Scotty can be a number one scorer, and I mean I don't think RJ can either. But if any of these guys were to surprise me and become like a borderline number one scorer, I think it would be RJ just because of his, he has a a solid handle. He's really athletic, and he finishes at the rim like really inconsistently, but like when he looks right, he's finishing at the rim really well. And he's had flashes. He had a couple seasons in New York where he shot the three really well. I think if anybody on this roster is going to surprise me and be a number one scorer, it can be him. I think like it's not out of this world that Scotty does it, but I think it's just realistic that he's a lot better of a player on a better team than a number one scorer. Offensive MVP, I went with Scotty just because his passing is legitimately the best skill that they're going to have out there at any point in time. Defensive MVP, if his true potential is actualized, it should be Scotty Barnes. But from what I would expect on this team, he's going to be doing too much on offense to be their number one defender. I really do like the Quickly name that you mentioned. I don't know if he's going to give the full effort on defense next year, with them wanting him to do more on offense. But with what he did in New York, he's probably one of the best positional defenders on this team. But then I'll throw out Jakob Poeltl as well because his rim protecting is, it's really good out there. So
yeah, I was gonna pick Jakob Poeltl. He's gross.
Yeah.
Big
Other
Jakob
than that,
fan.
I don't have too much on this team. I think we hit on a lot of good points here. Maybe they're playing team, maybe not, but we're
I think that's
saying
the ceiling.
we're saying generally this is a tanking team next season. So that
I
should
agree.
cover it for the Toronto Raptors and the Atlantic Division. Next episode should be the Chicago Bulls episode, starting up the Midwest Division. Am I making that up? Let's search NBA.
I'll only be looking up the divisions when it's like NBA Wordle
nope,
or
it's
something.
the Central Division. That's what it's called.
Mm.
Okay. So, yeah, next episode will be the Chicago Bulls episode. I'm signing off, co-host Sheldon Kaufman signing off. We will see y'all then.